Well, hello, and welcome to Circus History Live. I'm Bruce Hawley, president of the Circus Historical Society. Circus History Live is produced monthly by the CHS. Recordings of previous sessions are available on the CHS YouTube channel. Our guest for tonight's program is CHS Trustee Brian Hollifield, who will tell us all about Jerry Bangs, the most famous clown you've never heard of. And now here's the host of Circus History Live, Chris Berry. Chris?
Thanks, Bruce. If you're a member of the Circus Historical Society already, you may have read about Jerry Bangs a few months ago when Brian wrote a truly amazing, groundbreaking article about this clown. But most people, even clown experts, had never heard of Jerry Bangs. So we've asked Brian to come on, introduce us to this really great clown just prior to his induction into the Clown Hall of Fame. So, Brian, tell us a little bit about Jerry Bangs.
So much to tell, Chris. Thanks for having me on this evening. I appreciate that. Yeah, so this discovery of Jerry Bangs, or we'll call a newfound discovery of Jerry Bangs, has been quite groundbreaking. Although some have heard a little bit about Jerry Bangs in the past, it wasn't until recently in a collection that was discovered and brought to market that we really learned all that we did about Jerry Bangs. There were some letters that were found that were instrumental in really telling the story that you'll hear about tonight. And as you mentioned, it's culminated now in his induction into the International Clown Hall of Fame here during our banquet ceremonies at the CHS convention here in about a week. And we're excited to tell a bit about that story this evening.
So, tell us a little bit about the fact. I mean, he was with the Ringling Circus in the 1930s, and this is a great Kelty photograph of the lot there in Brooklyn. What was this about probably 1935 or so?
This is 1931, actually.
Okay.
1931. Jerry had joined the Ringling Show in the summer before, in July of 1930. And there's a lot going on in this photograph. I love it. Ironically, Jerry is smack dab in the middle of this picture. He's dressed in his what he called the cuckoo act, which was a hat with a bird that popped out the top of the hat that simultaneously the old ooga ooga horn, auto horn, would make this sound. And Jerry was right in the middle of Brooklyn tent right here all along. And it wasn't until our discoveries that we could identify him, not only in this photograph, but many others that helped us learn more about him, that he's really been right under our nose all this time. We just didn't know who he was.
So, this is a picture of Jerry without his makeup on. Tell us a little bit about how he became interested in the circus and actually clowning too.
Yeah, we'll lead into some of that in some of these slides that go, but this was Jerry probably in the 1940s. And, in the very beginning, all he wanted to do was be with the circus. He really had no intention of clowning or doing anything. He just wanted his way in. And his way into the circus was his designs for clown props, gags, skits, things like that. And when confronted with some of the sketches that you'll see here in a little bit, by Pat Valdo, the gentleman that hired him, Pat said, "Well, how are you going to produce these? You haven't provided them. You just had these sketches." Jerry really was running in circles at that point, trying to figure out how he was going to make it on the show and be able to provide this. And again, we'll get into some of this later on, but he found a way to do it. He was very determined, very hard-headed, had difficulty in accepting no for an answer for anything. And I'll be darned if he didn't find his way into the circus one way or another. He did it.
And these are classic gags, some of which have we still see today, or at least within the past couple of years.
Of course, yep.
So this letter here, which was written in 1932, it's kind of hard to maybe read it if you're not familiar with his handwriting. But what's he saying to his mother and father here?
This actually just an illustration that there were literally hundreds of letters like this that he wrote on at least, I would say, 2 to 3 times a week, that he would write to his mom and dad and just tell them about what was going on with the show, what was going on in his personal life. And as you'll find out later, we found this discovery of letters that I was able to mine all of this information I'm sharing with you this evening simply from these letters that Jerry actually ended up using to help write a book. He actually used them. If you look in the photograph in the bottom right corner of the envelope, that's Jerry's handwriting from probably 40 years after the letter was written there in pencil. he used the letters as a diary, so to speak, where he could go back and mine information out of the letters, and he created small notes on the envelopes that he could then create for recall for his book.
And this is the book itself, right? Never published, but this was the manuscript.
This is the manuscript. He began working on this after an interview with the local newspaper where he lived, suggesting that he write a book out of all of his stories. And Jerry's response was, "No one cares to listen to my story." And fortunately, though, Jerry didn't listen to himself. He went ahead and wrote the book. And thankfully, today, although it was never published, it was found hiding in a lower dresser drawer along with those letters that had been saved and squirreled away all those years. So basically, from the letters to the book comes the Jerry Banks story.
And this is about 50 years ago that he was writing this, right?
Yeah,
About the
he embarked on this about 1973. He worked on it over the course of about a year or so, and he spent the balance of his life until he passed in 1978, even until his last days trying to have the book published.
So he came from a place called Lisbon, New Hampshire. Tell me a little bit about that town and how it was important to him becoming involved with the circus.
Yeah, it's really one of those cliche small towns. You know, his father operated the town's Rexall drugstore, which, as you can imagine, was kind of like the hub of activity in the little small town. They probably got together and shared stories, and all the gossip and all the rumors went in and out the front and back doors of that pharmacy. But his father was well connected with folks there in the town. You know, being the pharmacist, he was connected into the physicians and other professionals. And as you'll find out, that actually ended up the way that Jerry ended up into the circus is one of his father's good friends, Dr. Neil Hoskins, ended up writing a letter of recommendation for Jerry into the circus. Another prominent family to Lisbon is the Brummer family. And if you'll go ahead one more with that slide there. The Brummer family lived in proximity to the Bangs and the Hoskins family. Dr. Hoskins there on the left lower of the screen, the Brummers there on the right, and the Bangs family at the end of the street. So in this little triangular pattern, you had some significant circus families actually right there in this town. And Jerry would pal around with the Brummer kids and ended up going to circuses together, and that's ultimately how he discovered his love for the circus.
And Dr. Hoskins, I mean, he was a well-known circus fan in that part of New England, traveled with the Ringling Circus in the summertime. I mean, people knew who he was too.
Of course, Dr. Hoskins was another amazing story that came out of the Jerry Banks story. He was a Dartmouth graduate alongside of Dr. Shields, who was a longtime Ringling physician, and in a some sort of reunion of sorts, Dr. Shields invited Dr. Hoskins onto the show just during the summertime, one summer for a few weeks. And as Hoskins put it, he suddenly became infected with circus germs. And for the many years that followed, he palled around for at least one of his vacation months in the year with the circus. So he had developed a good rapport with the Ringling Show. So essentially, if Dr. Hoskins says that Jerry's good for it, we should go ahead and hire Jerry. And that's how he earned his way in.
So this is like he is, what year was he born?
1903.
So, by the time that he's in his 20s, I mean, it is the roaring 20s. And of course, he was a very talented composer also. Tell us a little bit about, his career as a musician before he ever became a clown.
I don't know how much he was involved with music. He had to at some level during his growing up years, but this is a photograph of Jerry at the steps of the Boston's New England Conservatory of Music. Believe it or not, Jerry attended this institution for 7 years and did not graduate. He lacked two classes. I don't think he was in a hurry to take the two classes. And as I found in letters, I think his mother always was concerned about his ability to get along in life, if you will, and earn himself a good wage. And I think Jerry was doing a little bit of stalling on dad's dime there at the college. So that's how he would do that. He was well known amongst the faculty. After 7 years, I think you should be. This is a pupils recital where Jerry was the headliner playing one of Chopin's pieces, the Etude in F major. So there were several of these in that collection that showed that Jerry was, in fact, a qualified pianist.
And not only a pianist, but also understood music composition because, as you will find out later, he actually wrote some circus tunes, including some that the Ringling Band played.
He did, and we'll get into that. I mean, he certainly was very well schooled in how he was able to put that together. Um, this particular, with him being involved there at the school, I find quite interesting that it pops up later for him. He taught for a period of time at the end of his collegiate years, as he put, he was teaching dumbbells piano, and at the at the end of the 20s, where we're getting into some of this Depression era, one of the very first things cut from a family's budget were piano lessons. So Jerry was having to look around outside of his musical inclinations for how he was going to get along in life, and the circus was the answer.
So again, he came from kind of a prominent family in this small town in New Hampshire. These gentlemen here, these are not circus employees, but they are circus fans, right?
Yes, it's a gathering there. I put this illustration up that if you see standing in the back row, the fourth from the right, that is Dr. Neil Hoskins. And he's mingling amongst a lot of the guys that know obviously who he is. And I just use it to illustrate his importance. That he really went out on a limb to give Jerry's referral. And it seemed that, the bosses at Ringling at that time were willing to take that with some merit to give him a job.
And of course, one of those was Fred Bradna himself, the impeccably dressed equestrian director, kind of the image of all ringmasters to come. He was contacted by Hoskins, right?
He was. Jerry arrived to the lot, and I don't recall exactly who greeted him to begin with, but they told him that if you want to be hired, you need to go see one of two gentlemen. And they pointed at Carl Hathaway, and then they pointed at Fred Bradna. And if you know these two individuals and you've studied any photographs at all, I mean, which one would you go to? He chose to go to Fred Bradna. And Fred Bradna immediately pawned him off on Pat Valdo, which is really how his circus story begins, is when Jerry presents, and this is Pat seated in the center there, his former clown days. And it's interesting, I like to point that out because, it kind of takes one to know one. And obviously, I think Pat had some inclination that Jerry had what it took if he hired him to begin with, on top of the letter that was provided. So, the way that it worked out is Jerry presented some sketches, which you'll see coming up here in a couple of other slides. He presented some sketches to Pat and said, "These are the ones, and I would like to sell these to the circus." And Pat quickly told him, "We don't buy ideas, we want the production." And Jerry was just left wondering, well, how am I going to produce this? And in that next slide, he found the McFadens, who were a Boston, they were serving as a prop builders in a Boston theater, School of Elocution, a theater school. And the McFadens actually, I believe, had an ulterior motive in helping Jerry. Let's picture for a moment. Jerry comes to the McFadens and says, "I was just hired by the Ringling Show. Can you guys build my props?" Well, what do you think the McFadens are going to do? They're going to go from the basement of this production school into potentially the greatest show on earth. And so I think they had a little ulterior motive in helping Jerry, but they did a good job of it because if you look ahead at the next slide, you'll see the one of the props that Jerry provided a sketch for was this sightseeing in Chicago. This is the sketch that was provided. It rolled around and it had like a pivoting periscope at the top and simulated the gangster era of Chicago. That it was only safe to go sightseeing in Chicago in this tank. So
If you're
this
in
is
his
what
tank.
Jerry wanted to sell to Pat, and Pat would not buy it. He said, "I'll hire you if you can produce it." And if you go to the next slide, this is the item. This is what the McFadens helped him to create and what he showed up on the lot. So, and
And
we've got a couple more slides in that same series.
great visual gag for the circus walk around to have this sightseeing in Chicago during the Al Capone days. By the way, if you have a question for Brian, just put it in the chat. We want to get. He will answer a lot of them, I'm sure. But this is such a fascinating guy that you may have some additional questions for Brian also. So from sightseeing in Chicago.
I'd like to
Um,
point out, Chris, that gag was pulled from the stop in Chicago. When they got to
oh,
Chicago, management said, "Do not roll that out. Leave it in the wagon." So it never made
and
an
so this
appearance in
was
Chicago.
probably what 1932,
This was 1930.
1930.
1930. Yep. This is a dancing character. Again, this is one of the original sketches that was given to Pat. If you go to the next slide, it's just amazing how Jerry's ideas became the item. I mean, the McFadden's were very important in helping to put his creations to life here.
Very interesting. Yeah, he was really one of the very first producing clowns, right? Who didn't produce necessarily gags for himself, but for other members of the alley.
It was, and I think that part of the stipulation, though, early on is Jerry was actually performing these. He had no performing experience.
What they call this undercover
Yeah,
wardrobe with him later.
I just call it undercover wardrobe. It just simulates that his early years there, the first 2 years, he was actually performing. You didn't know it, but he was. I'm told through letters that his performance was so bad in clown makeup that they didn't want him out in the open, that he was best served with his ideas. And as a matter of fact, he was later told by Pat Valdo that we want you for your ideas. He's an idea man. So
Which is kind of interesting that, they could afford to have a guy on the show who was just basically designing and fixing props. He wasn't necessarily clown props and wasn't really performing.
yep, for $30 a week, he earned his wage.
So this is a photograph here of Mickey Graves, who was the property boss on the show back in the 30s.
Yeah, I like this as an illustration that it's an autograph to Jerry. It says, "To the man with the heaviest prop boxes in the world." Jerry came into the circus very naive, and when he first appeared on the lot, all of his props were crated in thin slats of wood and canvas. And everyone was immediately making fun of him that they would never survive loading on the train, unloading, coming off the wagons, however they were transported, that they would never survive. Jerry later said that his crates were best served if they were made of cast iron. And apparently Mickey caught on to this because as his concepts developed, so did the crates, and they became heavier and heavier and heavier to withstand the punishment of loading.
Very interesting. Yeah. So obviously, Lou Jacobs was one of the people who was on the show back in the early 1930s. It looks like they had a great friendship here also.
Yes.
And typical backyard scene, a little overexposed maybe, but that's authentic. There's no AI there. And
Yeah,
you can see it.
no, he's reading a Life magazine. If there's one thing I learned about Jerry, if he was going to be with the show, he was going to enjoy every minute of it. He talked very much in his letters about clothing he wore, comfortable chairs he sat in, food that he ate. It was not always about what happened in the show that day. It was all about the experience for him, and I guess you could say he really soaked in all the different aspects of living the circus life in that era.
And he embraced it. He really did, didn't he?
He
Uh,
did.
another photograph of him in the backyard there, and
Yep.
just a nice summer day, it looks like. Now, this next picture here was taken, I guess, on the lot in Cleveland in 1930. No, this one here, he's just kind of showing you how even living on the train and even dressing in Clown Alley, he could kind of be pretty spiffed
Absolutely.
up. Yeah.
Absolutely. But my favorite story of Jerry, and it's actually on his first day, is he has arrived on the lot with all of his props, and on his way to the backyard, there comes a tremendous thunderstorm, and it completely drenches him. And he finds himself with time to go back to the hotel where he was staying, gather a new suit, and this is a great illustration. And he comes back to the lot with things dried out, takes his suit off, lays it on a trunk, and by the time he comes back to gather it, someone has stolen his suit.
Huh.
So again, it's just one of those very first lessons I think he may have learned. He might have overdone it a little bit for the position he was in. And it's funny because you see him evolve over time into more of a, I guess you could say, gritty character and less style and pizzazz, you could say.
Interesting. Here's another picture of him. He took a lot of photographs himself, didn't he? I mean, you came
He
across a
did.
lot of pictures. He's got his camera there. I think that's on the lakefront there in Cleveland, Ohio in 1935.
Yes.
This next photo shows this costume, and we saw him earlier in that Kelty photograph in Brooklyn wearing this costume. Not exactly a traditional clown costume.
And it's actually it's dark. And as a matter of fact, there was a tale written that early, he was through I believe it may have been in Madison Square Garden, so it would have been in 31, by the Ringling booth at the Garden, and actually startled John Ringling, and
Oh,
startled him to the point that when he went off of the track, John had him fired immediately. And within mere moments, Pat Valdo approached him and said, "No more makeup, no more clowning." And this is where he came in with the statement I made earlier. You've been hired for your ideas, not your clowning abilities.
very
So yeah,
interesting.
within moments he's hired or fired and rehired. And this is the wardrobe that he was wearing at that time.
And here, this is a photograph also from, I guess that's 1931 there at Madison Square Garden. Shows the Clown Alley and a few other friends of Clown Alley there. Jerry, you can see, is in the top row up there by that poster for Clyde Beatty. Yeah, he stands out. He definitely does.
Very different for that time.
Yeah, and I'm sure that if he startled John Ringling and John Ringling was accustomed to those other clowns, maybe he never even knew that Pat Valdo hired him back.
That's true. Maybe not.
So this is he was a cartoonist also, right?
Yeah, Jerry wore many hats, and among them, he was very artistic, as you see here. And, like a lot of folks, maybe at that time, they were earning monies in different ways, not just, through the circus. And this just illustrates, how Jerry was artistic in his ways, where anytime they were in New York, so playing at the Garden or Brooklyn, he would spend time going to a lot of the different magazine offices there in the city, trying to sell some of his ideas for cartoons, comedy ideas. And so
So
I like this one. Isn't inflation terrible? And these lovely ladies are exiting the Woolworth in their fancy outfits. So,
the $500 and $1,000 store instead of the
of
five
course,
5 and 10 cent store.
yes, very
Yeah,
subtle.
he I guess, and we have a lot of clowns who are our friends, some of whom are on this call actually too, but you kind of have to be funny all the time, I think in a lot of cases, and that includes things like that. Boy, this, when they talk about scary clowns, I got to tell you, Jerry definitely stood out.
Yeah, I could never find this image other than this one actually in the circus or during performance. So I don't know if this was stage or not. This photograph actually came from the Fenning archives and had a very good provenance that it was Jerry. But when I was early on in my research of Jerry Bangs, this is what kept popping up. And this was on Pat Cashin's Clown Alley. And they would post it every October around Halloween as the scariest clown.
Yeah, I think.
And without really understanding Jerry's story, I mean, I think he was given a little bit of a bad rap early as the scariest clown. I mean, the wardrobe is yes, but you had to get to know him a little bit further to understand what that was all about.
He was obviously a creative guy. He understood how to uh, kind of take things to a different place. We talked about the cannibal earlier, and I know one of his classic acts involves a bicycle. And I'll show you a picture of this here. So, this bicycle, tell us how this works.
Yeah. So this original sketch, this is great. So the performer stands inside of the bicycle and he's not pedaling, he's actually walking. So his feet, if you were to see behind that curtain between the two wheels, he would be standing there. And on flanking each side of his jacket, those legs bolt to the side of that curtain, and then they also bolt to the pedal. So as you're walking around the hippodrome track or wherever you're at, those legs are, exaggerated, really going out in front of him, and he's just simply walking. But it was well put together, well conceived. Jerry bought the bike in Boston. It was a girl's bicycle he paid $8 for. And you'll hear something interesting at the end of tonight's show and see some cool things about this bike. That's it in action right there.
So you can kind of get an idea how that works. He's standing in that, it's kind of a black art thing where he's standing there and pushing the bicycle around as the wheels turn and the legs move. This is another great ad or gag that he put together here. Tell us about this.
It's just real simple, just to show his creativity. I mean, this is originally hand drawn by Jerry Bangs. You didn't do these on the computer back in the 1930s, but this simulates a three-headed clown. And if you go to the next slide, it shows how it was actually put undercover. Is it was, as he called it, a sturdy clown holding two smaller clowns, and so they would have been cloaked with one big cloak to reveal that previous slide there.
Very interesting. Now, this is also, on the surface looks just like a standard elephant blanket, but he again did something a little unusual with this, right?
Yeah, well, what the unusual part was is with John Ringling kind of out of the picture at this point by 1934, 35, Samuel Gumpertz is in charge and kind of took a liking to Jerry Bangs and started giving Jerry some different opportunities that, in my opinion, were really unheard of. I mean, we have a producing clown now being asked to come up with spec ideas, which included designs for the walk around. And later, as you'll find out, which included writing the music for the spec for 1936. I mean, this was huge. So again, this is just an illustration of his ideas. This was a elephant howdah design. I believe the next screen, puts this is on a horse, but the horse howdahs. This was all Jerry Bang's design. And when he provided that sketch prior to 1935, and when he got to the garden in 36, he was shocked to find 52 horses wearing his design. Had no idea that that was coming. So.
52 horses. That is amazing. When you think about Jerry Bangs, somebody who most of us had never heard of until you did your research and uncovered this, why do you think that he was an unknown? Why do you think that people are just now learning about this person who had so much to do with Ringling circus history in the 1930s, especially clowning?
Yeah, I would have thought there would have been more to do about him. I mean, he's certainly, I would say he's not unknown, but for what we're learning through this story here tonight and through the article that was in the bandwagon, we were able to glean a lot of new information about him. And it's really all just been there all this time, just needing the right avenue to find the information out. I think, in that era with Gumpertz, the show was just looking, as Jerry put it, to get as much as they could for free. And so, Gumpertz would ask for these ideas, and if you got the producing clown willing to do it on the hopes that he's going to get his big break, the show's going to do it. And Jerry later admitted that he knew that had been taken advantage of, but he understood why the show did it, and he would continue to contribute and participate in that matter. And he had some great ideas in the years that followed.
You're watching Circus History Live. This is our monthly get together to discuss circus of the past and the circus of today. And tonight, with Brian Hollifield, we have the opportunity to do both because we're talking about someone who was involved with the circus back in the 1930s, almost 100 years ago. But yet, we still find out that today, he's still making circus history, and we're going to kind of get into that a little bit. We've talked about Bandwagon and the article that Brian wrote about Jerry Bangs. If you're not a member of the Historical Society, I urge you to consider becoming a member. Our website is circushistory.org. Oh, there, Brian just held up. What is that? That's the magazine.
The bandwagon.
Okay,
Yeah.
That's the magazine that Jerry appeared in. But we really encourage you to become a member. It's only $60, and you get the Bandwagon magazine, which is chock full of all kinds of circus history, not just stories about people like Jerry Bangs, but also stories about the circus of today and the past. So right now, I want to take you back to Jerry, and we've talked a little bit about what he did to create things for the circus, 50 some horses that were dressed in the costume idea that he came up with. But he was also a composer going back to his days in 6 years of college that he had. Tell us a little bit about some of the tunes that he created.
Yeah, this is an amazing story. Probably to me, the most fascinating aspect of the Jerry Banks story is we learned that he composed this march, the Grand Circus Spectacle March, for Merle Evans and the band to play for the 1936 spec. And when I found this in the collection, I was intrigued. And the first thing that came to my mind was, I wonder what this sounds like. And so I reached out actually to Don Covington at the Windjammers, and I asked if this would be something that they'd be willing to take on as a project, and which they quickly did and did not hesitate. And so actually last year, and it's on their YouTube, I believe, they actually cut this tune during their convention. And I was in attendance in Gainesville, Georgia, and it's an amazing tune. And that tune was played for the very first time last summer in 89 years since it was last played at Madison Square Garden. And that was just really kind of bringing his story to life, hearing the music played.
And we think that in 1936, when the show opened there at the Garden, that he this was actually the opening song for the show, right? I
Yeah,
mean, this was
yeah,
the grand
exactly.
entry used this song that Jerry had created. So he certainly was somebody who Sam Gumpertz was counting on. These are some other drawings of things that he did. Tell us about these, and how
Yeah,
I mean, you must have been so excited when you saw these for the first time.
yeah. It actually solved the riddle. Is So this particular and the next slide, these were colorized versions of designs that Jared provided to Gumpertz for this, walk around. And these were at the Ringling Museum in their archive. And I actually had in the collection we had from Jerry some uncolorized. And I learned in writings that Gumpertz had requested colorized drawings for production, and that explained the two copies, Jerry's original and the colorized version. But yeah, these were just, again, just what to illustrate Jerry's artistic abilities and what he put together. Coming up in the next slide is his Cat and Mouse Act. Coming out of the 1938 strike, the labor strike, Jerry wanted to come out of the box in 39 with something new. We were under new management, if you will, John Ringling North, and he wanted to really impress. And what did it was this act, the Cat and the Mouse Act, where actually roles are reversed. The cat's stuck in the trap. So this is, again, just something new. And Jerry really came into his own during this era. One of the other concepts were the Believe It or Not um, theme, where he designed, in the next slide, the Believe It or Not clown band. And you can just roll right through these, where he designed these, the mother-in-law bass drum, it's all designed as a walk around. And as we get a couple more down the line there, you'll see this act actually in motion, including Lou Jacobs playing this absurdly piped tuba. All of this. And there you see it. Like he's having to like actually blow through all of this line. And then you have one more that illustrates the band all together with putting all those designs in play. You see the long armed cymbals and the exaggerated tuba, just showing some of the different abilities he had to bring a drawing to life.
So from there, we go to one of his probably best known effects, right? This Mr. Longneck.
Mr. Longneck, and Jerry would tell you he designed it after his own likeness. As he put it, a bald, bespectacled, big-eared young man, Mr. Longneck. And this was a great item, to find this photograph, among the collection. Mr. Longneck, really a classic. You go ahead one more, shows a close-up to illustrate that caricature of himself, Mr. Longneck. There you see. I can see the resemblance, can't you guys?
I sure can. So this is an interesting. This is obviously for people who are familiar with Bill Ballantine graphics. That's clearly a Ballantine. What is this a picture of? And
Yeah, so this is an illustration of the Jerry Bangs clown repairs trunk, where you might have other, as we'll call Jerry a clown, with wardrobe and things, elements of their wardrobe and costume. Jerry had a repair trunk, or as I like to call it, the clown toolbox. And that's really what this was. And this was done in 1948, really kind of towards the end of Jerry's time with Ringling, where I think he'd become really kind of a household name with the show. And if you go one more, they were cartooning even further with Jerry, as I like to call him, Jerry the hairdresser, with the subtitle Jerry Bangs Out Bangs for Chitlin's Chase. So kind of making a play on his name. But perhaps Jerry had more talents than just artistically that he could do some hair. I don't know.
so
This
this here,
illustrates yeah, this is just to show you how detailed he was in his work, was a checklist, if you will, or maintenance for the different props. There you see the cat and mouse, the Presto Changeo, which you'll see shortly, the long neck, where he talks about doing different things like lightening it, painting the head, new belt. I mean, all these little things just to keep him organized. I mean, he really, really took care of his props.
and these props, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more, because of the fact that you discovered them, which in itself is just an amazing story, are going to be preserved forever at the Clown Hall of Fame in Baraboo. which we will talk about shortly also.
We will. We're going to have to get rolling. So I'm going to go quick on some of these because I want to get to the best part of this entire story. Again,
Okay.
an illustration. Jerry had this patent design for kissing balloons. If you can picture two helium balloons that kind of bobbing in the breeze with this kissing design. Again, just to illustrate, his creativity, his ingenuity, his entrepreneurship, trying to make a buck beyond the circus, including production of things like this play. It Looks Like Rain, produced and written by Jerry Bangs. On the next slide, you'll see Jerry right center stage, there with his cast and crew putting this on in his hometown of Lisbon. This would have been maybe about 1957 or something in there. Um, the dehydrating machine. Now, the next few slides are kind of a rework of the previous. This was a 1944 dehydrating machine. The concept, folks, is that you go in one way and you come out another way. Like you look, you're not what you first appeared as. And that's what this is. And Jerry always felt like his dehydrating machine, which became ultimately the Presto Changeo, was really his signature piece. He said it survived rain, train wrecks, tornadoes. I mean, all these different things. And he said that prop outstood everything else and was really I think, one of his favorites. In his later years with Ringling, he designed the bargain sale. This is Clowns and Burlesque, as you'll see in the next slide of those arguing over items on a sale rack, where again, he designs a 6 slide sketch, including the wardrobe. This one for Lou Nagy. And then next one is showing the bargain gals there in all their wardrobe. And then the following would be the bargain sale enact. This again about 1945, which the bargain sale went on for some 25 years in different formats and different shows, not just the Ringling Show.
Here's a case of it. There's Emmett Kelly down at the at one end of the photo too.
One of his last hurrahs there with the Ringling Show was about 1947. And this was titled Westward Woe. Again, the original Jerry Bangs design, a covered wagon rumbles westward. And what I love about this, in the next slide, you'll see Jerry coaching his really Ringling's finest. You see Lou Jacobs there right beside of him, coaching them on how they're going to perform this act. So basically, from graphite and paper to the three-dimensional objects, this is Jerry's forte, is really putting it in motion and directing it. Again, just showing Jerry's capacity on this slide and next, where he is working on the show in different capacity. Doesn't look like a con to me, does he? He's just out there directing and just making sure things are going the way that they should.
Classic photograph of John Ringling North, and there's Mr. Longneck right above
Yep.
Felix Adler.
Yeah, ironically, we wonder about why didn't anyone know about Jerry Bangs? This appeared in that Life magazine, and in the caption, every one of these characters were identified in the caption except for Mr. Longneck and Jerry Bangs. So, even in Life magazine, he failed to get his due there.
This shows some of his acts: the bicycle, the clown band, the mother-in-law bass drum, and so forth. Mr. Longneck. So he would use this basically as a pitch to get people to rent his props. Is that the idea?
That's correct. In 1939, Jerry was working with George Hammond at the World's Fair, and it was not a very popular circus, unfortunately, and it was so slow that the management encouraged Jerry to take his props out on the Midway. The Midway was plenty busy. And that sparked an idea for Jerry, even back in 1939, that, hey, maybe my props are not just intended for circus, but perhaps stage show or parades. And that
Right.
was illustrated that for many years, that concept he developed, Cookville Comics, developed out of that. And there you see here a parade in action where you see the long neck or long-legged character, and over the right shoulder of the long leg bicycle, you see the long neck there in the background. So he would sublet these out, and in some cases, sublet them out to boys or young men to actually perform it. He would show up with the gear, explain how to use it, and they'd take off in the parade with it.
Just some more of his props that he built, including one called Bad Benny. I thought that was Bad Bunny to start with there, Brian.
Right? This is a photo taken, late in Jerry's career. As he's winding down, late 60s, this is probably taken 1970, 71, something like that. Jerry had developed some nerve issues that caused mobility problems with his hands, his arms, his ability to really work like he was able to. He'd always worked with his hands, whether it was with a pen or pencil or with tools, and he was no longer able to do that. And this is just a great photo of him with Palooza, who he was on many shows there during that era, the late 60s into his final show in 1972. And then you'll see that here again. This was the final year. Albert White there with Jerry Bangs in the center. This was taken in 1972, which is about the last time Jerry ever appeared at the circus. From 1973 on, he kind of vanished into his little apartment in his hometown of Lisbon, New Hampshire. And that's where, unfortunately, he had made the attempt to write the book, which you'll see on that next screen, another image of all of these letters. Again, all the little pencil notes on it are taken by Jerry as he helped to develop the concept for his book, which was titled My 20 Years with Ringling, which was never published. To be honest with you, he had as many rejection letters as he did these letters he wrote home. I had stacks and stacks of folks that just did not find publishers, that did not find his story interesting enough for the mainstream. For those of
These
us that are interested in circus history, yes, but for mainstream, they found it a hard sell.
I had the privilege at one point, you showed me these letters, and as you said, there are all kinds of things that were going on. But the fact that he wrote several times a week, there's a complete history of the circus from the 1930s up until, he left 20 years later. And Big Day, I mean, the strike in Scranton, Pennsylvania, the Hartford fire. I mean, he writes about all of those things in a way, and he's a good writer too, telling his family basically what was going on. What a wonderful thing to share. So, how did this all come about? How did you find out about Jerry Bangs and these
Yeah,
letters?
so it actually starts with the next slide, Chris. In the next slide, you'll see here. This is well, actually, there's two, but hang on this one. This is an order form for his book. As hard as he tried to publish it, he tried to go another route and publish it to the circus fans of America. And this was an order form that he published. He got two orders and ended up having to refund $12 because the book was never published. And as we go into the next slide, you'll find him with a book that's a failure in this prop room in the basement of the bank building in the main drag there in Lisbon. This would have been in the early 1970s. These props are out of work. Jerry's out of work. He's depressed. His health is failing him. He's having to get rid of things. And I found among the collection of letters a single letter that he had written to his brother and his sister, asking them to never repeat any of this. And they never got to because he never mailed the letter. And I'm glad that he didn't, because I read in this letter that all those props were purchased by the Hattie Shrine in Evansville, Indiana, back in 1975. The Hattie Shrine came to Lisbon, New Hampshire. They picked up all the props. Jerry came out the following fall in November. They always do their show in Thanksgiving weekend. And he instructed the Hattie Shrine how to maintain, how to take care of everything. And that was it. That was the end of the line for Jerry. Went back to Lisbon. The props remained in Evansville.
So this is worth underscoring. There was a letter that he wrote that he never mailed, and that letter said where the props were. Had you not found that letter that he never mailed, you never would have found the props, right? Or it would have been much more difficult.
That is, well, we never would have found the props. And the reason we never would have found the props is because the Hattie Shrine today did not know where those props came from. They didn't know who developed them, where they came from. I love this picture. This is, as I like to say, I was fooled into going to Evansville thinking maybe, just maybe, the props are there. So I come to the top of the stairs and I was met by this. The very first item I saw to my right was a prop trunk there in the middle that says Jerry Bangs. Now, some of you might be seeing that yard sale sign in front. That's the second concerning thing, is we were one yard sale or cleanup day away from getting rid of all these Jerry Bangs items. And to go with this, before you go on to the next one, I do want to quickly point out that, when Jerry passed, a lot of his paper, as I call it, the letters, the photographs, they were unclaimed. Jerry never had children, he never married, and there was no one left behind to accept these items. And it was actually a great niece who had passed, and a third party was asked to go clean out the home so they could prepare the home for the market, to put it on the market. And as this gentleman was putting the things aside, he started to realize that maybe this might be important. And he wasn't thinking dollar important, he was just thinking history important. And I applaud him for that because that's how he reached out to me through our business, which we're in the auction business, and asked me if I would be interested in this material to sell. And I told that gentleman at that moment, I will agree to sell if we can first tell. And that's what happened in this case is we were able to tell the Jerry Banks story before all the material scattered to the earth. So it's kind of a double thing. You had the reviving of the music, you found the props, you had the material, the photographs, all this stuff come together. And it kind of comes full circle to, if you look in the next slide, if you get that one pulled, Chris, when Jerry sold the props to the Hattie Shrine in 1975, he provided to them what I like to call the Jerry Bangs Bible. Go one more slide there.
Yep. Yeah,
And that Bible actually contained the schematics for every prop that they purchased. And among them would have been how to maintain it, how to perform it, how to do all the things that were necessary to take care of what Jerry called his babies. And
so this is it, huh?
so this is an example of one of the schematics. This is the ostrich barber pole, which I never found, unfortunately. But he provided this, as I called it, the Jerry Banks Bible that illustrated all of the different products. You see there upper right, there were 55 pages in this. And if you skip ahead one more, among some of the other schematics was this one for a camel walk around, a two-person camel walk around. Now, before you go to the next one, as I mentioned earlier, the Hattie Shrine did not know where these props came from. In 2025, nearly 50 years after Jerry Bangs had passed away, they were still using this and did not even know that it belonged to him. So this illustrates that importance of his props and the longevity of it. I mean, this was a classic riot act that they still perform in doing that. You saw earlier in the program tonight the Presto Changeo, or what we call the dehydrator machine. And in my conversations with the folks at the Hattie Shrine, they began to learn about Jerry Banks for the first time. And among their collection is still this gag that's a rendition of Jerry's prop, the Presto Changeo, that they labeled for 2025, the Presto Changeo, as kind of a nod back to Jerry Banks. And then, of
So
course, in that,
this
yeah,
was just last year that they were
this
using
was
this
just
prop.
last year. Yeah.
It's great. It's fantastic. So the next photograph shows these props as they exist today.
This is as they exist today. You know, so I provided this photo with the U-Haul, of course, because back in 1975, in Jerry's letter that he never mailed, he specifically referenced a U-Haul coming to pick these items up. So I felt it very apropos that for these things to go to the International Clown Hall of Fame, that they be appropriately picked up in a U-Haul the same way that they got to the Hattie Shrine. So you see in this collection, and I'm going to highlight a few things from left to right. On the ground, you see the cat and mouse. That was developed in 1937. Those are the heads, and the body suits are there hanging on the door of the U-Haul. You see the Mr. Longlegs, the striped pants right there, cluttered amongst things. That tuba was that Lou Jacobs tuba with all the tubing that was shown. You can see in the yellow hat, the Mr. Longneck peering out over the top of what is the bargain sale trunk. Those are gowns worn by the bargain sale gals right there. And then that Jerry Bangs crate, the one that you see facing you, Jerry Bangs in black there, that is what the cat and mouse was originally created in. And let me tell you, Mickey Graves was right. It is a Jerry Bangs safe, and it is a heavy thing. So that is the collection. That is all headed to the International Clown Hall of Fame, where this next week, actually, coming up. If you're anywhere near Baraboo, you've got to make it there for our convention because it's going to be a Jerry Bangs time of his induction and revealing of these props to the public. That last slide you saw there was the 2025 rendition of Jerry's Grand Circus Spectacle March. that composition that the Windjammers reworked, that had been digitized and they played it. I encourage you to visit their YouTube channel to view and see that presentation. It's quite amazing, and it's been my privilege to share some of the Jerry Banks story this evening.
So, and if you have questions for Brian, this is a good time to ask them. We have had people comment. Most of them are saying things like, is this a possible book? Well, one of the things that you and I had discussed, Brian, was that tremendous article that you produced for Bandwagon is kind of a small book, and I think you have really gleaned out the circus history, and it has been published, not by Jerry, but by you. And I don't know if there's any chance to do more on that, but the material itself. I mean, you mentioned earlier that the props are going to the International Clown Hall of Fame in Baraboo. There was an auction earlier this year where some of these artifacts and photographs and so forth are now in the hands of private collectors and institutions. But you gave Jerry Bangs a new lease on life, for sure.
It was quite an adventure. I purposely, as a nod to circus history, wanted to make sure that if there was anything to publish about Jerry Banks that I discovered, that it was put in its entirety in this article. And despite my efforts to do so, I still am finding information about him that has been right under my nose all this time. I'll pick up a program, a 1967 Pollock Brothers program, and find Jerry Bangs in it. And I'm like, I'll be dipped. He was there the whole time. So I'm always on these little now new discoveries of him. I still think there's much to learn about him. I would love to get in touch with folks that have had some actual interaction with him. Again, he passed away in 1978. That was a long time ago. I would be remiss in not mentioning Jerry's hometown, the Lisbon Area Historical Society. Andrea Fitzgerald there has been very instrumental, especially early on with me trying to understand the dynamics of the Lisbon community, the small townness of it, and the Bangs family and the other associated families. I understand they do have an archive of things that does include some Jerry Banks materials, and I'm excited to explore that further. Again, I don't know if this yields its way into a future book, but I will tell you this. If your bandwagon from the fourth quarter of last year has not been opened or it's still sitting on the coffee table, please pick it up. I think you'll enjoy the story. It's very informative, and I tried to give you the skinny on Jerry Bangs in a way that I think he would. And the last thing I'd like to ask, please, if you're anywhere near Convention Time Baraboo, don't miss the banquet. Some are saying Jerry Bangs is making an appearance, and we'll find out. But there's some surprises in store. Today's program, we've presented some things that are new that the public has not yet seen. So I hope you enjoyed that, and it's been my pleasure to present it this evening.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you for doing everything that you did to bring Jerry Bangs back to life and also to save these items. I'll turn it back to you now, Bruce.
That was so cool. I want to thank Brian for doing this, and Chris, of course. This is Circus Historical Society in action. It really is, and it illustrates the work that Brian, of course, did here. But there's so many members of our organization that do similar things with other people you'd never heard of. And our Bandwagon Journal has lots of articles by people who were behind the scenes. Some were famous, some were not. And it's really a great illustration of what the CHS is all about. So thank you so much, Brian, for saving this important history. Fantastic. Also want to thank Chris, of course, for being our host, and behind the scenes, Anya Norris, who does our production, post-production, I should say, and publicity. And she will put this recording together and put it up on the YouTube channel tomorrow. So if you would like to watch it again, you can certainly watch it on YouTube with all of our other recordings, all 50 of them. This is the 50th episode of Circus History Live. We started this during the pandemic, and we've kept it going. And then, of course, there's a bunch of other recordings on there too. This is all produced by us. This is original material. That's these programs, the Circus History Spotlights, which are short interviews. So this is Circus History in action on YouTube that's brought through these programs. And As Chris mentioned earlier, if you're not a member of the CHS, please consider joining us. Dues are only $60 a year. You get a fantastic journal, the bandwagon article that Brian talked about, and other benefits too, discounts coming to our convention and so on and so forth. So it's a tremendous organization, and if you're not already a member, please join us. I'd also like to thank all of you for coming to our program tonight and learning a little bit about Jerry and learn about the Circus Historical Society. So the convention is a straw house. We sold out all of our banquet seats, but many of you who I can see from the list who's here are going to be at the convention. This is going to be a fantastic convention because not only do we have all of our presentations. We have, I think, 14 or 15 presentations on circus history. We have many other activities, including the band concert, a band organ concert, visits to Circus World, to see a circus performance, the wagon collection, and of course, the induction of Jerry Bangs into the Clown Hall of Fame, which will be during our banquet. So before I sign off, Brian, do you have any final remarks?
I have nothing further. Go read your article if you haven't yet.
And Chris?
I read something recently that said that as long as someone somewhere remembers you, you never actually die. And Brian, I think that you have proved that people will remember Jerry Bangs for a long, long time to come. So thanks,
Uh,
Bruce. Thanks, Brian. Thanks all of
Thank
you.
you. We'll see you all down the road. Good night.
You.
Night.